With cameras and cell phones in every hand, we capture life's most beautiful moments, but also its darkest. The power to record everything, from joy to tragedy, means even the most horrifying accidents are caught on video, freezing those final, terrifying seconds in time. What happens when the pursuit of thrills and the routine of travel turns into a nightmare captured for all to see? The first story happened on January 15th, 2023, in Nepal, a day that began like any other for the 68 passengers and 4 crew members aboard Yeti Airlines, Flight 691. The flight was a routine domestic trip from Kathmandu to Pokhara, a city known as the gateway to the Himalayas. The passengers were a mix of tourists eager to witness Nepal's natural beauty and locals returning home. Among them was Sonu Jaiswal, an Indian national who, like many travelers, decided to live stream his journey for friends and family back home. The aircraft, an ATR-72-500, had a long service history, having been flown by multiple airlines before joining the Yeti Airlines fleet. Despite its age, the plane was considered reliable, and the flight was expected to be uneventful. As the plane took off from Kathmandu's Tribhuvan International Airport at 10:33 a.m., the weather was clear and the skies were calm. The passengers settled in, enjoying the breathtaking views of Nepal's rugged landscape from their windows. The atmosphere on board was relaxed, filled with the hum of conversation and the occasional sound of laughter. Jaiswal's live stream captured it all: the excitement, the beauty of the snow-capped mountains, and the serene sense of calm that permeated the cabin. But as the plane approached Pokhara, something changed. The pilots, experienced and well-versed in the route, requested a runway change, a small detail that might have gone unnoticed by the passengers, but was the first sign that not everything was going according to plan. Air traffic control cleared the request, allowing the plane to approach from the opposite direction. Flight tracking data later revealed that the plane had been transmitting inaccurate speed and altitude information, a discrepancy that would prove fatal. As the plane descended, the mood on board remained calm. The passengers, oblivious to the unfolding danger, continued to chat and take photos. Jaiswal's livestream showed the plane's wing against the backdrop of a picturesque landscape, a scene so tranquil that it was hard to imagine the horror that was about to unfold. Then, without warning, the plane banked sharply to the left. The sudden movement was jarring, and for the first time, a sense of unease crept through the cabin. But there was no time to react. Within seconds, the situation went from unsettling to catastrophic. The plane's nose pitched up dramatically, a sign of an imminent stall. From the ground, a bystander's camera captured the terrifying sight of the aircraft tilting precariously in the sky, its left wing dropping suddenly as if it had lost all power. Inside the cabin, panic erupted. Jaiswal's livestream, once filled with lighthearted chatter, now captured the chaos. The camera shook violently, the image blurring as the plane spiraled out of control. Shouts and screams filled the air, drowning out the sound of the engines. In those final moments, the realization of what was happening hit the passengers. Jaiswal's livestream showed flashes of light, the camera struggling to focus as the plane plummeted towards the ground. The noise was deafening, a mix of panicked voices, the roar of the engines, and the sickening sound of the aircraft tearing through the sky. Then, in an instant, it was over. The plane slammed into the banks of the Seti Gandaki River with a force that was felt for miles. The live stream cut out abruptly, the screen going dark as the aircraft disintegrated upon impact. Flames engulfed the wreckage, sending thick plumes of smoke into the air as the once serene landscape was transformed into a scene of devastation. From the ground, witnesses could only watch in horror as the plane, which had moments before been a distant speck in the sky, now lay in ruins. Rescue teams rushed to the site, but it was too late. All 72 people on board were killed in what became Nepal's deadliest aviation disaster in decades. In the hours and days that followed, investigators worked tirelessly to piece together what had gone wrong. The aircraft's black boxes were recovered, providing crucial data that would later reveal the full extent of the tragedy. The cause of the crash was eventually traced back to a critical error in the cockpit. The propeller control levers, crucial for maintaining the aircraft's thrust, had been mistakenly set to a position that cut power to the engines. As the pilots fought to regain control, the aircraft stalled and spiraled into the ground. The live stream, meant to capture the beauty of a flight over Nepal's mountains, had instead documented the final, terrifying moments of Flight 691. It was a stark reminder of how quickly a routine journey could turn into a nightmare, and how technology, for all its wonders, can also bring us face to face with life's most fragile moments. Just as the world was still reeling from the harrowing images captured during the Yeti Airlines crash, another tragedy unfolded, this time on the ground. On June 2, 2023, the railways of Odisha, India, became the stage for one of the deadliest train accidents in the country's history. This story, like the last, was captured in its most horrifying moments, leaving an indelible mark on all who witnessed it. It was around 7 p.m., and the Coromandel Express was speeding through the Balasore district, slicing through the evening air as it headed south from Shalimar in Howrah, West Bengal, towards Chennai, Tamil Nadu. The train was packed with passengers, families, workers, and travelers all heading to their destinations, unaware that their journey would soon take a deadly turn. On a parallel track, the SMVT Bengaluru-Howrah Express was traveling in the opposite direction, returning north from Bengaluru to Howrah. Both trains, moving at nearly 128 kilometers per hour, had been cleared to continue at full speed. They were on the main line, and there was no reason to suspect that anything was wrong. Yet, beneath the surface, something was terribly off. Unbeknownst to the passengers and crew, a signaling error had occurred. The electronic interlocking system, which is supposed to guide trains safely along their routes, malfunctioned. This system, designed to be nearly foolproof, directed the Coromandel Express onto a loop line, a track meant for stationary trains. And on that loop line, a massive goods train sat idle, loaded with heavy iron ore. The Coromandel Express was hurtling straight towards it. Inside the Coromandel Express, the passengers were relaxed. Some were enjoying the evening view from their windows, and others chatting or catching a quick nap. In one of the unreserved coaches, a sanitation worker was mopping the floor, a routine task in the midst of what seemed like an ordinary day. But the ordinary was about to become anything but. As the Coromandel Express sped onto the loop line, the passengers felt the first jolt, a subtle shift that went almost unnoticed. The train's speed didn't decrease. It continued barreling forward, straight into the stationary goods train. The impact was catastrophic. The Coromandel Express slammed into the iron ore-laden behemoth with unimaginable force. The front of the train crumpled like a tin can, and 21 coaches were violently ripped from the tracks. The momentum of the crash sent 3 of these derailed coaches careening into the adjacent track. It was at this precise moment that the SMVT Bengaluru-Howrah Express was passing by. In a sickening twist of fate, the derailed coaches of the Coromandel Express collided with the rear of the SMVT. The collision was so powerful that the last 2 coaches in the brake van of the SMVT were thrown off the tracks. What had been a scene of calm and routine was now one of chaos and destruction. Inside the Coromandel Express, passengers were thrown from their seats, trapped under debris, or crushed by the force of the impact. The unreserved coaches, often filled beyond capacity, bore the brunt of the devastation. Bodies were piled together, lifeless in the twisted wreckage. The SMVT fared a little better. The rear coaches, which had just escaped the first impact, were now mangled by the collision with the derailed Coromandel Express. Passengers who had been dozing off or chatting with their neighbors were suddenly plunged into a nightmare of twisted metal and shattered glass. Rescue teams were dispatched immediately, but what they found was beyond what anyone could have imagined. The once orderly railway tracks were now a tangled mess of steel and debris, with coaches piled on top of each other in a grotesque monument to the disaster. The National Disaster Response Force, NDRF, and Odisha Disaster Rapid Action Force, ODRAF, led the rescue efforts, but the sheer scale of the disaster was overwhelming. As rescue workers fought to save lives, pulling survivors from the wreckage and treating the injured, the full horror of the accident became clear. The death toll climbed steadily, eventually reaching 296, with more than 1,200 injured. Hospitals were overwhelmed with the injured, and makeshift morgues were set up in nearby schools to handle the dead. The shock of the accident rippled through India, and questions began to emerge. How could this have happened? What went wrong? As investigations began, the focus turned to the signaling error that had sent the Coromandel Express onto the wrong track. The system that was supposed to be fail-safe had failed in the worst possible way, and now hundreds of lives were lost because of it. But there was another twist in the tale. A video, recorded by a passenger inside one of the coaches of the Coromandel Express, surfaced in the days after the crash. The footage, intended to capture a mundane moment of travel, instead recorded the final, terrifying seconds before the crash. The video showed the sanitation worker mopping the floor, and passengers relaxing in their berths, unaware of the doom hurtling towards them. Then came the sudden jolt, the violent shaking of the camera, and the deafening screams as the train collided with the goods train. The screen went dark, and the video ended abruptly. As we shift from the heart-wrenching scenes of the Balasore train disaster, we now turn our focus to a different kind of tragedy, one that didn't involve hundreds but was no less devastating. This time, it's the story of a single man's fatal fall, an event that was both personal and public, played out in real time for millions to witness. The final stunt of Wu Yongning, China's famed rooftopper, whose daring escapades had captivated the internet. Wu Yongning was no ordinary thrill-seeker. At just 26 years old, he had made a name for himself as China's first rooftopper, scaling the country's tallest buildings without any safety equipment. His videos, filled with stomach-churning stunts, earned him a massive following online. From hanging off ledges to performing pull-ups on the edges of skyscrapers, Wu was fearless, or so it seemed. His daring feats had turned him into an internet sensation, and the lucrative sponsorship deals he secured from his viral videos were his ticket out of poverty. But on November 8th, 2017, what was supposed to be another day of adrenaline-fueled exploits turned into a nightmare. Wu had chosen the Huaiyuan International Center in Changsha, a towering 62-story skyscraper, as the backdrop for his latest video. The plan was simple: climb to the top, perform pull-ups on the ledge, and capture the entire stunt on camera. What he didn't realize was that this would be the last time he would ever attempt such a feat. That day, Wu Yongning began his climb in the same way he always did: calculated, confident, and without any safety gear. He ascended the building, floor by floor, until he reached the rooftop. From there, the view was breathtaking. A panoramic sweep of Changsha, the city sprawling beneath him like a patchwork quilt. But Wu wasn't here for the view. He was here for the thrill, for the challenge, and most importantly, for the reward. It was rumored that this particular stunt had a prize attached, money he desperately needed to help his ailing mother and to fund his impending wedding. With his camera set up to record, Wu edged towards the ledge. Below him, the city buzzed with life, completely unaware of the tragedy about to unfold. Wu took his position, gripping the ledge with his hands, and began to pull himself up, his muscles straining with the effort. The first few pull-ups were successful. His body moved with a practiced grace, honed over years of stunts and training. But as he attempted another, something went wrong. Wu's grip faltered. Perhaps it was fatigue, or maybe he had misjudged the ledge's slickness. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, he dangled from the edge, struggling to pull himself back up. The camera captured it all: the desperation in his eyes, the trembling in his arms. And then, with a sudden, sickening realization, he lost his grip entirely. Wu Yongning fell, his body plunging 45 feet down to a terrace below. The camera continued to roll, capturing the empty ledge where he had once clung. His body was discovered later by a window cleaner who stumbled upon the lifeless form on the terrace. The video of his fall, intended for a different kind of fame, quickly went viral, spreading across social media like wildfire. The images were haunting: a young man, full of life and ambition, brought down by the very thing that had elevated him to stardom. Wu's death sent shockwaves through the online community. His fans, who had followed his every move, were devastated. Many couldn't believe that the man who seemed invincible had met such an untimely end. But the tragedy also sparked a conversation about the dangers of the burgeoning rooftoping trend. Chinese media was quick to criticize the lack of regulation and oversight on live streaming platforms, arguing that these companies prioritized profit over safety. In the aftermath, Wu's mother took the live streaming platform, Huajiao, to court, accusing the company of negligence. She argued that the platform had incentivized her son to take on increasingly dangerous stunts without warning him of the risks. The court agreed, ordering Huajiao to pay about $4,340 in compensation, a small amount compared to the life lost.